Hello and good morning, everyone, to this new episode on Sales Leadership Studio. We're talking about today is again, we'll continue the communication piece and how important it is, how critical it is for the sales and sales leadership. We did touch upon a couple of items in our previous, we covered three of the items from the list of 10 that we highlighted could be essential for any communication skills and how you could make it essentially important for your success. My name is Wajid Ali. I am a sales and leadership coach. With me is my co-host and partner, Simon. And we are here live from Canada to share with you and to dive into this communication and how important it is. I'll bring Simon as well up on the screen, and then we will just jump into the content of today's podcast.
Excellent.
Hey, Simon,
Thank
welcome.
you, Wajid. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the Sales and Leadership Podcast, and we look forward to sharing some of our insights, best practices, and expect that this can really help you in your sales leadership journey and to basically improving your sales leadership capabilities. Again, I'm Simon Rodriguez, and I'm based in Calgary, Western Canada. Been working in the technical sales industry space roughly 18 years now, and we really look forward to sharing some of these insights and excited about today's episode. As we did mention, we initially covered some of the key skills when it comes to communication and why that's important when it comes to building sustainable and long-lasting sales engagement relationships, right? So I think with that, we can probably start with the discussion. We covered the main three topics or some of the top three skills in the last session. And the next one we wanted to cover today was overcoming objections. And obviously objections is something that we always face when it comes to being in sales, and let's say different perspective from the customers, different let's say reasons why perhaps it's not the right time or it's probably not the right solution. And I'm curious to get your perspective, right? Because I think by using active communication, it can help you map some of the reasons, objections from the customer, and propose solutions and options to overcome these challenges. But what's your view on this, Wajid, and how do you normally handle objections, and how do you focus on overcoming this as you see them?
Right, it's a tricky one because everybody, I guess, perhaps may have their different ways of overcoming or curtailing the objections, right? But I can certainly share what my experience is, and then you can kind of reflect on yours. And the reason we're talking about communication today is because we have heard from many of our colleagues, peers, leaders, and people that we work with that perhaps this skill is many times overlooked. Like, although we say communication is important, but we don't spend time to improve our communication. Now, communication is not only verbal communication or written communication, right? It's your body language, it's your posture, it's, to your point, how do you react or overcome any objection or objections. When you're new into the sales world, typically if you get an objection from your customer or your client, what do? What is, normally it's a kind of a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
You just try to influence or convince your customer by making them, I guess, annoyed at times. So let's say if you come to me with a sales pitch or with a product pitch and I tell you I'm not interested, and if you're a new salesperson, what do? You would try to ask me, why not? Why you're not interested? What is missing in my product? And I just told you I'm not interested, right? So why are you trying to convince me? So how do you handle this situation? It's tricky, but you need to handle this professionally. You need to look like you're trying to help your customer by understanding their needs, by asking exploratory questions, diagnosis questions, by asking them things that you may know, but you're trying to articulate those things to your clients as an outcome focused value proposition, which we spoke about it in our previous podcast. So how do you articulate your message? Is again, it goes back to all the three items that we discussed in our previous podcast. Is how well do you understand your customer, and how well have you established those relationships with that particular person or that particular business, right? And if you have done all the homework as we did in our previous podcast, I think you can very easily uh, overcome any objections, because now you understand your customer, you understand their needs, you understand what is best for them, and you're not just trying to sell, you're actually trying to help. So as I said, I mean, we can speak for hours and hours on what could be the best strategy of an objection, and every objection is different. You need to have that kind of skill set where you can uh, travel a journey with your customer and overcome any objections. I will take a pause here, but I would like to hear your reflections on this one too.
Yeah, and I think you cover most of the key aspects in terms of managing those objections. I want to add is the concerns area, right? Because that's something like one way, and that's something I've found is trying to understand, number one, what are those concerns that a customer, potential customer might have on using your solution, or what is driving their objection, right? It might be a perception of risk. It might be a perception or a concern that is driving that, obviously, that objection. So I think it goes back to, through active listening, understanding the root cause or the what is driving the objection, right? It might be a concern about the technology or the solution that you're proposing. It might be a potential risk that the customer is seeing. So if you work closely with the customer on alleviating those concerns or reducing that risk, kind of giving them options to reduce that potential risk or that potential concern that they're perceiving, that will put you in a better position. So I think that's just basically in addition to what you shared with us, Wajid. I think that's another thing, is understanding kind of what's the root cause of the objection, what is driving the objection, and if there is any perceived risk, how can you reduce, mitigate, or alleviate that risk, right? So that's the way I see it, and kind of the follow step, right? The follow up step, once we have, okay, we went through that process, active listening, value prop, we manage the any potential objections. Now the question is, how do we drive engagement, right? How do we encourage the customer, the prospect, to go through the sales process now that value is proven, that has been a proof of value, proof of concept, everything is properly aligned. How do we drive that engagement to the next step? And I think from that perspective, it's important to have a clear communication in terms of expectations, in terms of understanding what the sales cycle, what the process is, so there are no kind of a frustration or misunderstanding through that sales process. But yeah, I know there might be many drivers when it comes to engagement. What's your view on
Right.
the engagement piece, Wajid, and how do you think we can drive it with customers?
Yeah, again, it's a challenge all the time, engaging your customers, because we all know that, just think about yourself personally, right? And just reflect upon it. When we go out to the market for any particular product or service or solution, whatever we're looking for, we get emails and phone calls and pitches and sales pitches from a variety of people. Now, this is what happens to our customers as well. They get they are being accessed by multiple salespeople, multiple businesses. Perhaps they are selling similar or same products or solution. So that's what actually happens during the process. And that's why perhaps one of the reasons is that your customer loses that engagement. So how do you keep your customer engaged? I think one of the skill is the personalization. How do you personalize your message or your pitch, your value proposition to cater the needs that your customer is trying to solve? So that's one of the way. Second way is storytelling, right? So you can come to the office, to the meeting room, and share some of similar stories where you might have helped a customer in who was in similar situation, who was in similar uh, who was trying to solve similar problems. So if you have those storytellings, if you have those reference stories, those personalization in your communication, it will help keep the customer engaged in the process, and you will not lose that connection.
Yeah, that's a really good point with it, because I think through like getting that, or getting the customer in terms of alignment, and being aligned with the customer in terms of the outcome driven solution, as you mentioned, the outcome driven results, and I think through storytelling we can get to that point, like putting actually the customer in the driving seat of what the outcome is going to be once they have the solution in place. So obviously that will bring that level of engagement to move the process to the next stage. So yeah, I wouldn't underestimate. I think is quite powerful, the importance obviously of using a storytelling to drive that engagement to the next phase, which actually bring us right now to that kind of a last stage of the process, which is closing. Closing is in most cases seen as the most important stage of any sales process, but at the same time the most challenging, right? Because there are many occasions in which perhaps you have everything in place, and the closing is the most challenging aspect. So the way I see it, and again, going back to the initial points, is clarity, is transparency, expectations is the main thing I will stress. Is as long as you have clear expectations, you have a clear path into what the closing stage is, any paperwork that is required, any administrative process that is required to complete the transaction, is a key thing, right? Having a clear process and clear expectations. But yeah, what's your take on this, Wajid? I know closing is always it's a hot topic, because it's quite important. Obviously, is the most important one at the end, but it's challenging as well, right? So how would you handle into getting into that ideal closing stage?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You do all this hard work, you follow all those steps, those processes, and now here you are. You're at the closing point of the deal. And how do you close it? I think I totally agree with you. It's always challenging. So if you have established a clear communication, if you know what the next steps would be, most of the time, I think it's important that you understand that you don't need to leave the customer alone during this part of the journey, because what we do is we do all the hard work. We kind of travel on a journey with our customer from step 1 until step 5. Now we are at step 6, which is closing the deal. So when we are at step 6, we need to ensure that we are still engaged, we are still talking to our client or our customer, we are still helping them navigate through some of the processes. It could be, perhaps it might be a first time for them. They may not have done something similar in the past, right?
Right.
If you're bringing a novel solution to the industry, or it might not be a novel, but it may be a first time situation for your customer, your client. So how do you help them close those steps? How do you help them navigate through those steps? How do you lay out the steps? As you said, what are the documentation required? uh, who are the stakeholders that needs to be included as part of this closing steps? What are the terms and conditions that needs to be addressed? What are other functions on your side that you need to engage? It could be legal, finance, your leadership. So there are so many things, so many steps that needs to be put in place in order to close a deal. But one thing which is, I guess, foremost, and which is of high priority, is how confident and how clear you are in your communication. And the more confident you are on your product, your service, your solution, the more positive vibes you communicate via your body language to your customer, right? And that's how you make them confident at the same time. So I know I can talk, and I'm just mindful of the time, so I'll take a pause here. Simon, any parting thoughts, and then perhaps we can close it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that those are kind of all the key elements in terms of closing. I will add the expectations portion that we talked about, not only with the customer, but expectations internally as well, right? Like in terms of signing off, in terms of working with your internal teams, understanding and having that clear expectation. It's important, and that goes also around forecasting, etc. Right? If you're defining that this opportunity is coming this quarter, so you need to have that clarity on expectations, both internally and also with the customer, on how long the process will take and what's required in terms of signing off. So yeah, I think those are all the key things we wanted to actually address and touch today. We look forward, excited to dive into the new topics in the next session. And until then, we look forward to your comments and additional thoughts. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.